Hello, this is Gavin McDaniel. Myself and Durwood Shepherd are going to be presenting on the standard plans implementation. This is a recorded repeat of the presentation that we did in the 2017 Design Training Expo. It's also been updated to include more recent information. The standard plans will be released on November 1st, 2017, and they will be implemented on July 1st, 2018 for lettings on or after July 1st, 2018. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the presentation roadmap and what to expect. I'm going to talk about the title change. I'm going to talk about the number changes, the standard plans vision that we have, the timing for the changes, and Durwood's going to get on and talk about what problems we're trying to solve, standard plans process, the nomenclature, and he's going to go through a preview of the resources in the website. Now I'm going to talk about the title change. We're changing the title from the design standards to the standard plans for road and bridge construction. Over the past few years, we've been trying to align our processes and procedures with the standard specifications for road and bridge construction. So you'll see some changes come along that kind of align with those standard specifications. So as I said, we call them standard specifications, and for short, we'll also call the standard plans for road and bridge construction standard plans. So what are design standards? When we were trying to come up with a name to better describe the content, we were just looking at what does design standards mean, and we're looking at other terminologies because we wanted the name to represent what we actually have in the book. The use of the term design standards varies. Of course, it could be a standard set of design criteria. It could be a list of design manuals and requirements for an entity. It could be standards used to design something. So the term really didn't match what we intended it for to be with the contract that we have with construction. The design standards are supposed to be standard construction drawings. So we did a Google search, and the results, of course, showed FDOT design standards all over the place. But in general, we'd find entries like this. Design standards are a library of design guidelines and code. On the other hand, when we looked up standard plans, the use of the term doesn't vary. It's very specific and used for specific documents throughout the country. The Google search results showed us that Caltrans, the California Transportation Department, uses standard plans. Washington State uses standard plans, and Wyoming Department of Transportation uses standard plans. There's several other states that utilize this term, and it's consistent. So let's take a look at the various department publications we have. The department publishes construction contract document system that include the standard plans, the standard specification, pay items or the basis of estimates manual, and also the approved products list that we have. So we went through an effort recently to align the processes and implementation dates for all of these construction contract documents and other documents as well in the department. If you want to look back at that, you can look at Engineering and Operations Memorandum 16-02. The thought behind that was to improve the collaboration between our various offices in the department and also to provide better coordinated products for our customers. Taking a look at the numbering system change, here's an example using thermoplastic pavement markings. As you can see, here are the components of that construction contract document system with the standard specifications, pay items, and approved products that all use the 711 number. If we did not change the numbering system for the standard plans, we'd have something that just seemed out of place. So we're just simply, for the number change, aligning the number of the standard plans with all the other associated documents that the contractors are using. So the first three digits indicate the construction contract document system, and there are other digits after those first threes that are specific to the particular publication. So they specify certain divisions within those specifications. So anything after the first 3 digits may not necessarily match. We wanted a numbering system that had real meaning. We wanted to provide stability for our new numbering system. In the past, the numbers have changed quite a few times, and they've been randomly chosen, so they weren't really based on anything real. We wanted the numbering system to provide a cohesiveness with all the documents. We wanted consistency as well. We also wanted efficient knowledge retention for the users, and especially the new users of our documents. We wanted understanding from all users. So the renumbering the indexes is based on the primary specification and pay item numbers. We realized that some of our indexes are associated with multiple specifications of pay items, but we went through a process of identifying the primary specification for each one of our indexes. It doesn't require knowledge gain. Designers and contractors already know the spec and pay item numbers, and it's more intuitive and redundant. It also brings inconsistencies to light for future improvements. Through this process, we were evaluating the numbering system, and some opportunities for future improvements kind of rose to the surface. So over the next few years, you might see additional changes come to the standard plans that are improvements based on what we've identified through this process. I want to talk a little bit about the vision that we have for the standard plans. The department's vision is serving the people of Florida by delivering a transportation system that is fatality and congestion free. Well, we all know that that may not be humanly possible to have a fatality and congestion free system, but that is our goal. And our vision is always aimed a lot higher than we can actually achieve. So we have some vision for the standard plans, and how does that help realize the department's vision? One of the visions is one interpretation of our standard plans, policy, and specifications by the users. We will achieve this by providing plain language. We want clear, concise, and consistent detailing and organization. Another vision is 0 questions from designers, 0 errors and omissions. We would like to achieve this by using standard plans instructions, which give the designer instructions on how to properly incorporate these indexes in their plan set and provide consistency in how they do it. We want to provide clear FDOT design manual criteria. Another vision is to have 0 construction claims. We would clearly define the responsibility between the designers and the contractors by putting the information in the correct location. We also don't want to use ambiguous language. We also want to lead the nation in innovation. We accomplish this by the use of our developmental standard plans and specifications and our innovative products list and approved products list in our product evaluation office. So how might we achieve one interpretation from all users? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that the information is placed in the correct location. We have design criteria versus construction plans. And in the past, the majority of our roadway related design standards have had a mixture of design criteria and construction plans. We want to focus on the end user needs, and the end user of our standard plans is our construction folks, the contractors. We want to reduce the number of sources for the same type of information that we're placing. We also want to be clear on the designer versus the contractor responsibility. If design information is located within these construction contract documents, then the contractor might not be clear on whether it's his responsibility or not. It's also realized that we've seen some inconsistencies from district to district as to whether they believe that they should put something in the plans or it's already covered in the indexes if it's already in our standard plans. So this leads to a more clear and consistent interpretation of what we need to have in our plant's production process. Here's a very simplified example that might illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. So let's say we had standard plans to install a light bulb. Well, the guy's out there in the field that's hired by the contractor to install this light bulb. So he gets this standard plan to install the light bulb, and all he needs to see is, I've got this light bulb that's been provided to me by the contractor. It's listed on the APL. All I have to do is stick it in this receptacle and hand tighten. Well, what we've seen in the past is, well, how about let's provide him with some general notes here that probably should be in the standard specifications. And oh, how about a nice little detailed drawing of what's inside the light bulb? And maybe we'll have some designer notes, some electrical formulas for the designer. Oh, we certainly don't want to miss the payment information that should be in the spec. And maybe some other helpful information for this guy. Well, if I'm the guy trying to install this light bulb, how long is it going to take me to find the information I actually need? And how clear is it going to be to me that I don't need to do anything else? So we've recently seen our standard plans vision realized by the release of our guardrail index 400. It will be renumbered to 536 after this new release. The information was placed in the appropriate location. The roles and responsibilities of each person are clearly identified. We've had very few questions, and the questions that we have had have been easy responses. Next cycle, we expect 0 questions. We've also been able to eliminate a frequently asked questions webpage that had been maintained for years. We've also eliminated a guardrail engineer position. So why make these changes now? With all the changes we have coming on with the FDM and all these other changes going on, why is it so critical that we make these changes now? Well, for several years, the Bridge Maintenance Office has been requesting that all bridge-related design standards be included in the structure's component plan set. This is due to the nature of the bridge design life lasting anywhere from 75 to 100 years, and the need for maintenance to be absolutely sure of what standards were used in the construction of those bridges. If we did this, our standard plans usage process would have to change. We also would have to have a need to distinguish between bridge and road, and also updates to references in the ebooks would have to occur. There's also a program being created to pull drawings based on pay item numbers from the standard plans into the plan set. So we have this effort going on with PPM to FDM, where all publications must be searched for references anyway. So at the time, we were like, well, if we're ever going to make this change, now's the time to do it. If we're going to make the change with the name, why not go ahead and renumber? So now Durwood's going to talk a little bit and finish this out.
Thanks, Gavin. What I'm going to start going through, I know Gavin kind of alluded to this with some of his slides about the standard plans vision, our office's goal as a whole, but just kind of reiterate some of those things and demonstrate why this change is being done, not only from a renumbering and renaming perspective, but from the total vision of trying to create a system of construction documents and design documents that serve their proper functions for the folks that are doing that particular work. And so in this kind of example right now of some of the current problems with the different documents we have is we have these currently the instructions for design standards, which kind of sometimes are referenced either within the PPM or FDM, the BOE, some of the design standards reference the instructions right now. You've got the BOE, which isn't in and of itself a construction document. You got the PPM, FDM, which is a design document, but then you have the specifications and the design standards, which are truly intended to represent contract documents and are referenced in our contract plans through reference on the key sheet. So you can see how when a document that is a construction document references one that's not, how that can create some issues, both for an understanding of what the information represents and who's responsible for it. So as a result of going to standard plans, and in this kind of overall vision for our office would be to eliminate the cross references that go back and forth in directions where it's not intended. So for instance, the instructions should only ever reference the standard plans. The standard plan should never reference the instructions, as the instructions are a design aid. And then that would leave the only other possible path as construction related documents that can talk back and forth to each other would be between the standard plans and the specifications. And then all these other design documents can communicate with each other or point to those construction documents, but not back out the other way. As an example of some of the issues that were currently present, I grabbed the SubSoil Excavation 120 spec as an example. Here we have a current design standard that's titled Removal of Organic and Plastic Material Index 500. That removal of organic and plastic material in that context is not referenced within any of the other contract documents. It's all referred to as subsoil excavation. It's paid for in the pay item structure through 120 subsoil excavation. Here's an excerpt from the existing PPM that references subsoil excavation. It does provide a reference to index 500 for what the designer needs to understand about that type of activity. But obviously, circling back around to the overall vision that if you have an index that's titled and numbered so that it can be easily understood how that works with other items, it creates a much better working system. Here's just a quick view of the subsoil excavation part within the BOE. So, that was just a quick example. Now I wanted to kind of go through some of the notifications that have gone out that has a lot of the detailed information, and we'll hit on some of those items as I go through the presentation. But in March, we issued a design memorandum that basically notified everyone of the coming name and number changes of the design standards to the standard plans. It also outlined the different usage process between bridge and road related items. It made available the idea of an impending crosswalk, and I'll cover that a little bit more. But that crosswalk will be there to provide a reference within the contract documents between the old numbers within the design standards and the new numbers that will be used for the standard plans. Following that memorandum, Roadway Design Bulletin 1706 was issued, which actually provided the implementation schedule and made official the crosswalk that will be published with the standard plans that provides that number reference, so that at any point in time that maybe within a contract document that a number doesn't get updated, that there's a reference there within the contract mechanism for that. So the crosswalk, this is a concept that has been used in the past and that we're implementing here. At the present time, we intend on publishing the number crosswalk with the standard plans for a minimum of 2 years. That way, for plans that are substantially complete, that it wouldn't affect any of those existing contracts and that contract language that may already be present, and allow for a contractor that might see a misreference for, say, Gavin talked about index 400, to go to that crosswalk and see that index 400 is now renumbered to index 536-001, and that be, again, part of the contract. And this will also allow for a time period where maybe other agencies, state and local, could get some of their documentation or their guidelines updated to match with the new standard plans numbering system when they rely on our document for assistance. So what does the crosswalk look like? In a zoomed in view here, you can see that we're basically laying out the crosswalk so that it is numbered and organized based on the previous design standard index numbers. So someone who's familiar with that order can go into that crosswalk and quickly find out what the new number is. Along with the crosswalk, we'll also be publishing a traditional table of contents within the document, and this will provide it the same information in the other format where the standard plans will be arranged based on the new number, and those new numbers obviously are going to be tied into the primary specification pay item, or the primary specification and the primary pay item associated with the work within that index. And also the subcategories and the divisions of the new standard plans will be based on the same divisions as they are divided in the specifications. So when you see these subcategory titles, those match those particular titles within the standard specifications. Another important thing to point out is this miscellaneous section that will be included within the table of contents. In a closer view, you can see that those miscellaneous items all start with 000, and that is obvious that there's not a specification or a pay item that starts with 000. So this was a place for us to temporarily house some miscellaneous standard plans that are either containing a lot of criteria information, and we didn't have either time to this cycle or a developed location to place this criteria in another document. So, or they are standard plan where there's still a heavy mixture of criteria and contract information, and again, still working towards a solution to find a permanent location for that information. So the long-term plan is that these 000 miscellaneous standard plans would eventually go away once we find a better place for them. But for right now, they still exist, and we wanted to create a numbering system and a location for them so that people wouldn't get them confused with any standard specification section or pay item. Also want to point out an example here with settlement plate standard plan, where it is a standard plan, but there is no standard specification. When settlement plates are used, there's always a technical special provision, or TSP, written to govern the work associated with them. So what we did there is add a designator in the second 3 digits and place a T in there, and so that will help, give a key to the user that there's not a standard specification 141, that in fact a technical special provision is always provided along with that, but that kind of standardized number for the TSP starts with 141. Also issued with the bulletin, Roadway Design Bulletin 1706, is also the nomenclature that we would like to try to standardize as part of this standard plans implementation process. This information is intended to be used by both the consultant engineers preparing plans and where index references are relevant, versus also document holders within the department that also reference the standard plans. And so we go through the different elements that are associated with the standard plans, whether that's just a basic index reference shown first, a reference to the new standard plans instructions, or interim revision, developmental standards, or instructions to developmental standards. So this is just the guide so that, like I say, everyone knows how to consistently reference specific indexes or the standard plans in general. Along with that is also a definition of sorts to help people understand the difference between standard plans for road construction and standard plans for bridge construction. So as Gavin mentioned, we had to make a designation here cut so that we could group them separately on our website to allow for people to understand which standard plans are being attached to the structures component as related to a bridge project, and everything that's not attached to the plan set. So here's a pretty simple definition of that. Basically, If it's any index relating to the bridge approach slab, substructure, or superstructure, then it's included in that bridge. But when we talk about road construction, it would include all roadway related items, but also any structural related items that are located along the roadway. So that could include walls, drainage structures, embankment, lighting, signing, signals. So the designation is strictly, if it's bridge, it goes with the bridge. If it's not bridge, then it falls into the roadway or the road category. In terms of the implementation schedule, the new index numbers and this nomenclature, which is intended in providing the new standard plans designations, will be included within the standard plans, which will be published in November of 2017 and will be effective for July 2018 lettings. However, as I spoke about the reasoning behind the crosswalk, we were giving some latitude for other projects that are currently in design, depending on its phase. So for lettings between July 2018 and June 2020, any plans that are less than the phase 3 submittal must be updated to include the new standard plans numbers and nomenclature. For lettings between July 2018 and June 2020, which are already beyond the phase 3 submittal, we're going to leave those up to the district's discretion. So that may be some projects that are currently just going through a normal design cycle, or maybe projects that have been on the shelf. Things that are substantially complete and that we don't want to expend a lot of consultant resources to go through there and update references when we have that crosswalk available. And then ultimately, all lettings on or after July 2020 will require to be a full implementation of the standard plans, numbers, index numbers, and the nomenclature associated with it. So as a part of this kind of educational effort into this change between design standards to standard plans, it kind of led us to looking at a lot of the various guidance that we have surrounding the usage of standard plans, and that a lot of that documentation was shown within various locations, predominantly on our design standards website currently, as links to a PDF document that covered everything from our developmental standard plan or developmental design standards process, or how to use the current IDSs, to what we call a terms of use document for the use of the DGN CAD files that are on our website. So these were all different documents that were spread across the website and various links. And so we talked with the criteria group and discussed actually including a new chapter within the FDOT design manual that will cover the standard plans, all the associated processes, and then also reference to the standard specifications for road and bridge construction, so that EORs and users of the various documents, know what their responsibilities are as designers. So that led to the creation of a new chapter, which will be issued with the FDM. It will be chapter 115. And I'm going to go through various parts of that new chapter and what it covers, so that people can fully understand that. I know there's a lot of text here. I'm just going to underline a few things to get the point across. One new process that we implemented is what we refer to as a standard plans errata. Basically, this is a very minor change, a editorial or typographical error that we want to go ahead and fix outside of our standard publishing cycle, but yet it's a change that would not affect anything about the design criteria associated with it, the cost of that item, anything that would affect the contract in any kind of way. It's just very minor errors that we just want to go ahead and take care of, get it posted, and move on. One distinction, although when there is an errata posted, you can find a red line for what changed. That change gets automatically pushed into all of the documents as they're referenced on the website. So you don't have to go find that errata somewhere outside of the published document on the website. The standard plans developmental process. This is something that, you know, we had a standalone document and flow chart located on the website to kind of guide a designer and engineer of how to implement a developmental standard within their plans. That flow chart and the process will now be included within this chapter. And basically, I think most people are familiar with our developmental standard plans. Is basically the process, like Evan talked about, of integrating new or innovative concepts into the plans. There's a central office monitor for the developmentals that has to approve the usage of them. But all of these different details are now laid out in this new chapter. You can see here on the right is the new flow chart that will be included in the FDM to guide users through that process. Standard plans interim revisions. I think most people are kind of used to calling these DSRs when we were using design standards revisions as the term for this. But when we only use the term revision, sometimes that got confused with the revisions we were just making as part of the standard cycle updates and publication versus a revision that is issued and published out of cycle that is intended for implementation before the next regularly scheduled book is released. So this is a specific change. Maybe it's due to some change in construction methods that can't no longer be applied, or it's a safety issue where we're going to push that revision to be implemented on a specific schedule. And basically the new terminology is going to reintroduce the word interim. You know, that's a very descriptive word to use with these, because obviously it's an interim change that will be then rolled into the next publication. And so it also helps us divide up which revisions are just going along as part of the traditional publication cycle and which ones fall outside of that cycle. Modifications to standard plans. This is a topic that I've found out that there's some inconsistency when there's a project-specific need to make a modification or change to an existing standard plan, and they want to use the CAD drawings that we provide on the website to do that, how that process is actually handled within the plans and how it's represented. So this particular information was covered under our terms of use for using the DGNs in the past, but that the more times I spoke with designers or reviewers in the districts, it became evident that they didn't really know that this existed, and how they got showed in the plans was not being done consistently. So basically there are three methods for doing a modification, project specific modification to the standard plans within a given project. Method one would be to take the drawings and the details that we provide in the CAD files and produce a new project specific drawing set where you no longer reference the standard plans within or that specific standard plan within the project at all. It's a completely standalone document that you're creating basically from scratch. You're just using what we have as a template. Method two would be that you would take that CAD file, and although there would still be no reference to the related standard plans in the contract plans, it's more of a modification of the existing details and notes. You're not completely redeveloping the index. And method three is the most typical, and that is where you just have one minor detail that you need to modify because it won't. One little detail from the CAD files and represent it within your contract plans. A common one, I show a concrete barrier in the top right corner of the slide. That's a common one that we see where for some reason the foundation of our standard concrete barriers conflict with something, and so they need to do a project specific design to alter the foundation element. Well, all you got to do is grab that one specific detail, place it on a separate plan sheet within your contract plans, title it specifically a modification to standard plan and whatever that particular index number is, and that's all you would need to do. And like I say, that's the most common approach, is that you just got to change one minor detail for project needs. Standard plans instructions. These were previously called instructions for design standards, or for short IDSs. These are reference documents, guides, if you will, that have been produced out of the structures design office for some time now. I'm pretty sure that all of the structures related design standards currently probably have an IDS, but roadway design elements are kind of coming up to that. I think the first real complete instructions came out along with the improvements to the guardrail standard. So you'll be seeing a lot more instructions developed for this very purpose. But we wanted to include this process and the details of it within the FDM chapter to make sure that the engineer of record was understanding of his responsibility to understand what's in the instructions and determine the applicability of a particular index within his plans. Data tables are another issue. These were previously covered in the instructions guide, and it's basically providing detailed information there about why there are separate CAD cells located on our website. And this is something that probably long-term will remedy itself, but because of different publication cycles in the past, when we would make a change to a design standard that would impact how a CAD cell, traditionally it was always data tables, would require a change to them, and the new CAD load hadn't been released yet, then we would post all the relevant CAD cells alongside the index so they were available for designers to go ahead and start using them. We're working towards a much better system of releasing our documents. So long term, this shouldn't be as much of an issue, and will probably ultimately go away, but they're still posted at this time. And finally, we were just adding in to this chapter some information about general EOR responsibilities to the standard plans, and again, how the EOR is responsible for determining the suitability of a particular standard plan to his project, and then he becomes responsible for that within his project. The standard plans website that's currently still under construction. There will be a new homepage. Previously when you went to our design standards website, it was kind of a one-stop shop, which was the original idea, and a very good one. But over time, the amount of information that we're trying to give the user, it kind of becomes a lot of information to look at one time. So we wanted to provide a little bit more concise content when we move to the standard plans. And then there's also the separation of the standard plans for road construction and the standard plans for bridge construction. So the website was going to have to be a little bit reorganized just for that. So just very high level here. Here's what the current website looks like. You can see that there's an industry review information on here. There's a link to training. This is where you would find the link to get to all of our developmental design standards or bulletins. And then below that, you have this historical archive of the various design standards that have been published since the early 70s. And it also listed whatever the most recent publication was as current, which was a little bit of a misnomer, because within a particular construction project, they could be going back a couple of years, and it's not necessarily current to them, may just be current to design. So here's just a new look at the new homepage for the standard plans. We've kind of created this new homepage so that people have a better selection of the different topics. At the top will be a link to the new standard plans, and it will be a new site where this first edition of the standard plans will be located, and then subsequent years we will add to that list just like we had for the old design standards. But if you're looking for design standards, previous versions, and they are housed on a separate link, as you can see there, the second link. But from there, the website I think will be a little bit more intuitive with respects to that, providing various information for the supporting documents, training, history, things like that, instead of having it all shoved into one page. All right, thank you everyone. This last slide just contains some contact information for me and Gavin if you have any questions after you've viewed this webinar. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you guys. Appreciate everything. We didn't see, just got one question that came in. Will the presentation be made available after the webinar? So, yes, it will. Yeah, it'll be, we're going to be looking at a couple different options. One will be in Learning Curve under the PM webinar series, where you can find all the webinars that we've presented to date all in one spot. And I believe it's going to be on the Office of Design training page as well.
Right. So at the top of the design or the standard plans page, whichever one you go to, there's a training link, and it should be found under there probably.
Okay, great. So don't see anything else. I know one thing did come up in a conversation was some information on box culverts, and I know there's been a couple of things going on lately, and if you guys could maybe give us a little bit of information on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. This is Durwood again, everyone. In between preparing the presentation at the time of the expo and till now, there's been a couple of additional developments that we just wanted to let everyone be aware of, and that's a change to box culverts and how those, or where those will be shown on a plan set. Because of as we discussed in the presentation, the usage requirements for attaching bridge-related standards to the structures component plan set, the fact that box culverts are sometimes considered bridges and sometimes not, sometimes included in the structures component plan set, and then when there's not a structures component plan set, they're attached to the back of the roadway component plan set. There's several different issues there. It also creates some issues with digital delivery when you have really large plan sets and you got to send it around the drainage folks and roadway folks and then the structures guy just to sign and seal some box culvert stuff. So moving forward, there will be a new requirement that all box culverts, regardless if there's any other structures related items or bridge items, that there always be a structures component to the plan set or the plans package, and that's where the box culvert data tables and report of core boring sheets will be. No real change in the format of that information at all. It'll just be those couple of items, and that's it for box culverts. Additionally, you'll probably notice that there was a design memorandum or roadway design memorandum that went out just a few days ago, 1704, and it covered some changes to the lead key sheet for project plans. And the main thing I just wanted to point out as it relates to this topic is that the example key sheet that was attached to that and that memorandum addressed how to now handle calling out the governing standard plans on the key sheet, because obviously that language is going to be different from what was there from the design standards in the past. So pay attention to that memorandum again, because that now shows how we want the standard plans to be referenced on the lead key sheet. Other than that, I think we're good to go.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions. I'd like to thank Gavin and Durwood for their time today. If you have any questions, you can contact us and we can help you direct those questions in the right direction. Remember, we'll be posting this on the Learning Curve and on the Office of Design website. So if you missed some of it, you can go back and use it, look at it, and if you need it for a reference, it'll be there. So appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next webinar. Thank you.